Coming up on the Branding Deep Dive podcast.
I mean, I'm just gonna throw out two examples. No shade at their talent or whatever they can do on the court, but Kyle Kuzma for a good season was the face of Puma. You would see him in every billboard in Los Angeles. Jordan Clarkson was dating a Kardashian or multiple, I don't even know, but like dating models. That doesn't happen in Memphis. That doesn't happen in Houston. That doesn't happen in Portland. The fact that Kyle Kuzma got all these endorsements, there was another energy drink that he got, that doesn't happen even in Miami.
Or Philly or anywhere.
If those average players are getting significant marketing deals from big companies like Puma, other like menswear type of stuff, you want to take advantage of that, right? That's your way of getting a max deal.
This is Ahmed Cheema, and welcome to the Branding Deep Dive podcast. If you're new here, on this podcast, we have in-depth discussions on what brands are doing right to earn customer loyalty and how you can take those principles and apply them to your own brand. On this episode, we're talking to our friend Jaraad Huq, who is the biggest Kobe fan that I know. We're going to be talking about how the Los Angeles Lakers have built a brand that, according to Forbes, is valued at $4.4 billion. Yeah, you heard that right. That's billion with a B. Now, here's Jaraad Huq. So Jaraad, you want to give us a brief introduction, who you are, what you're doing, where you're at nowadays?
Sure. Thanks, Abdul Mannan and Cheema, for letting me join in on this podcast, this budding popular podcast. Yeah, so I'm Jaraad Huq. I'm currently in Metro Detroit. I'm leaving for Los Angeles tomorrow. Go figure. Currently a fourth-year medical student. Go to the same med school as Abdul Mannan. We were roommates last year, and I'm a big Lakers fan. So,
here
we go.
I forgot. Chimo was asking me about a fun fact that I put on the outline of this episode. But the fun fact I wanted to tell Chimo was that Jaraad, when we were on campus in med school, I'm pretty sure he spent more weekends in LA or Detroit than he did on campus at med school.
That's a fact. That's
a real fact. 100% fact. And he still killed it. So that's like, for
that's
anyone
impressive.
thinking it's not possible, it's definitely possible. But yeah, we can definitely go into your story now. Jaraad, tell us a little bit about your fandom with the LA Lakers, and how you, as someone from Detroit, born and raised, right?
Correct.
Became an LA
born
fan.
and raised in born in Grand Rapids, raised in Detroit.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So walk us through your LA fandom.
Yeah, so just to start it off, obviously I'm a diehard Pistons fan just because of geographical location and whatnot, proximity, whatever you want to call it. But it was pretty much the year after the Lakers and the Pistons played in the finals. That was the first year I actually watched basketball, and that was the first year, obviously, that I saw Kobe. And although that wasn't Kobe's finest postseason, let's just say that, it was eye-opening to just to see someone who emulated MJ, who had his work ethic, if not better, who had that killer Mamba mentality, which was just starting during that season. So I kind of gravitated towards Kobe in 2004, and since then I've been just he's my, I mean, we're not supposed to say idols, but he's my hero, let's just say that. I think the moment that I realized that I was a big Kobe fan, the thing that started it all off was when he hit that game-tying three-pointer over Rip Hamilton in Game 2. Now the Pistons were up 1-0, so they were about to be up 2-0, but then he hit this stifling three-pointer right on Rip's face, and they won that game. That was the only game they won. So I was like, wow, this is dope. Like, I haven't seen anything like that. And if you watch a lot of his interviews or read a lot of his books and stuff like that, he mentions in that 2004 summer, that was a very critical summer for his career, He was just coming off that Colorado case. The Lakers had just lost to the Pistons. Shaq was leaving. So that's when he turned into the Black Mamba in the summer of 2004. And so that 04-05 season, that following season, that's when he just went crazy. Like he just, everyone was his enemy, and he was just, no matter how close you were to him, no matter if you were good friends with him, no matter if you were a former teammate, he wanted to destroy you. And he averaged about 30 points per game that season. And that's when I was like, that's my favorite player. So I would say since 04-05, I've been a Kobe Bryant fan first and foremost. And that was the, catalyst that led me to following and becoming a fan of the Lakers.
So let me get this straight.
Yeah.
03-04 finals, we have the Pistons versus the Lakers.
Yeah.
And that's your first exposure to Kobe Bryant. And from there, you kind of you fell in love.
Correct. Yeah.
It sounds like you said the Mamba mentality, like the Black Mamba mentality, or that personality of Kobe started at that point. So there was no like idea of Mamba or like Black Mamba before that. Is that right? I'm not.
Yeah, no, that's right. And obviously I was like, 11 or something. So
yeah,
Black Mamba wasn't a thing up until he scored about 81, right? Which was a year
right.
That season. But that's when, I saw a difference from June when he played in the finals to November when that next season started. And the guy didn't smile. He was biting his jersey. He was flaring his nostrils. Like, you could tell, like, this dude was different post Shaq. And then, that Christmas game happened when Shaq came back to LA for the first time, and you just saw Kobe. He was just attacking Shaq every single time. And that was the main thing.
Yeah,
go on.
So I was going to say, that change in mentality that happened, can you walk us through what's driving that? I know a lot of people at that time were saying the only reason Kobe's winning these championships is because Shaq's there.
Yeah.
And so is that why he was like super pissed and had something to prove, or is there something else driving that?
There were also other personal stuff that was going on. He had just, that's when Natalia, his oldest daughter, she was about 1 or 2. And he was 3 years into his marriage with Vanessa. And that whole Colorado case happened in the summer of 03, leading into the 03-04 season. And it obviously, just like any other personal issue, whatever issue in the house, it put a strain in that family. And they were just expecting Gianna, I think, a year after, that season. So Vanessa was just pregnant by the time, and Kobe wanted to fix everything. He wanted all of that stuff prior to the off season 2004 to be behind him, and he just had a vengeance, whether it was the media, whether it was Shaq, whether it was the Pistons, whether it was the Spurs. Regardless of who it was, he was like, you know what, I'm going to change right now. I'm going to be the best version of myself. And he said in multiple interviews that he wanted to be the best version of himself for his family, for the most part. He wanted to make things right with Vanessa. Obviously, his daughter Natalia didn't know, she was too young, but his future daughter Gianna. And again, he wanted to prove the media wrong, prove the players wrong, that he could win with a bunch of outcasts like Smush Parker, Caron Butler, that he could win without Shaq. So it was just that whole, I wouldn't even say new chapter. I would say like a new trilogy to his life. That's what it was.
That's really interesting. I want to ask you this: is the term Mamba mentality, was that actually a thing that next season, or did that come after?
That came again. That pretty much came after Kobe scored 81 against Toronto, against Abdul Mannan's Raptors. I think it was January 22nd, 2006. That was the day, something like that. He scored 81, and then a few months on Jalen Rose. Literally, I think 75 out of the 81 was on Jalen Rose.
Oh my goodness.
A few months after that, the Lakers took on the heavily favored Phoenix Suns in the playoffs, and Kobe had that iconic game winner, and he led a whole bunch of, again, the Kwame Browns and the Smush Parkers to a 3-1 lead against the Phoenix Suns, who were heavily favored to win that series. And that's pretty much when people realize, like, okay, Kobe is on a mission. It doesn't matter who's on his team. He's going to will them to victory. He will score 60. He will score 70. He will score 80. He never actually scored 70, but he had multiple 60-point games. He scored, I think he outscored the Mavs 62-61 through 3 quarters. He had
That's crazy.
He had 10 plus 50-point games, I believe, that season. He was just a different player. So
did he
after that season, during the off season, that's when that Mamba mentality started to really become a thing, and that kind of coincided with his shoe line, Nike. Now, if you guys remember, he was actually signed with Adidas up until 2003. When that Colorado case happened, then Adidas dropped him. Obviously, you don't want to associate with anyone with a case. So he was a sneaker free agent. So he was rocking a lot of Jordans during that 03-04 season. And then that next season, he was informally wearing Nikes. And then that following season's when he actually started that Nike line, the Mamba line through Nike. That's when that logo came out. So yeah, around that 81-point game, that era, that 3-1 series lead against Phoenix, that's when his shoe line came about. That's when that Mamba logo came about. That's when people started to realize this is the Mamba mentality. That's when it started to grow.
I want to take a step back here and just point out a couple things here. So what's really interesting about this whole experience, I didn't know this, so thank you for shedding light on this, Jaraad. But when we see that there's a certain narrative that's being spun against you, there's a lot of ways you can respond. One of them is you just take the victim mentality. You're like, oh man, like they're saying I can't do this, whatever. You throw your hands up and you act, you give up, right? And what Kobe did is like, screw this, I'm a sneaker free agent. I don't care. I'm going to go off. And that is why so many people, I believe, like so many people like you and all around the world really got behind this Mamba mentality, because he's like, I'm going to take this story into my own hands and I'm going to will my way to success, right? No, I don't care what you say. I don't care what they say. I'm going to keep going and I'm going to do my best and bring the best version of me to every single moment, no matter what's being said about me. And so I think really owning your own story is what we can take from this. It's
interesting because we can talk about the Lakers' heritage for sure, but I guess my question, Jaraad, to you is: do you feel like, is there any other player on the Lakers? Obviously they've had so many superstars on their rosters over the years. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like, is there any player that had such a big impact on the Lakers brand as Kobe did? We talk about Shaq, Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain, all these people, and then there's Kobe. What are your thoughts on their impact versus his impact?
Yeah, so in general, I think most of the credit is due to Dr. Jerry Buss. He is arguably probably the greatest owner in NBA history. He moved that team. I mean, he brought that team from Minneapolis to Los Angeles, and made it into the brand to what it is today. So anywhere from the Wilts, the Jerry Wests, to the Magic, the Kareems, the Worthies, the Shaqs, the Kobes, the Gasols, the LeBrons. None of those guys would have the significance if it weren't for Jerry Buss. He allowed that franchise to thrive. So just because of that franchise thriving with all those rings, it already put all those players on a pedestal that was higher than other franchises. What I think that benefited Kobe, and it's no secret that Kobe is more popular than Magic Johnson, than Kareem, than Shaquille O'Neal, and I think there's two major things. One thing is that's when David Stern really started to market the NBA overseas, in specific China, the Philippines, India wasn't there at that point. It was getting really big in Europe, just because Europe's leagues were developing, the Spanish league, where a lot of NBA products came from, Italy, Germany, Greece, even Turkey. That's when David Stern really started to market those players and the teams. A lot of the teams would go play exhibition games in Shanghai, in Beijing. Again, a lot of this was expedited, I guess, through Yao. Yao really kind of opened that door, but Kobe did benefit from the globalization of the game. Another thing that really helped kind of globalize the game was the 04 Olympics. That's when Argentina actually won the gold. that's when a lot of these players realized, hey, we could take on these Americans. And, the league started to develop in those countries. There were a lot more talented players overseas. So it was just becoming more popular around the globe. So people knew more about Kobe, whereas, Magic Johnson was more so just in America, maybe Europe. But Asia was a really big component, I guess, in Kobe's popular embodiment, I guess. Again, Nike helped with that Mamba line, the shoe. Nike's huge in China. But the other thing is, the people need to realize, like, it wasn't just Kobe. Kobe kind of piggybacked off other people. Again, Yao was the main person that kind of opened the door, but that was actually T-Mac, who's the most popular player in China. Obviously, the Rockets were the most popular team in China because of Yao, but T-Mac was the most popular player, and Kobe and T-Mac were great friends. So Kobe really did benefit off of that. But again, Kobe did a lot of sneaker promos in China. He would go to all these local courts in Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou, stuff like that, and he would hold these coaching sessions with all these Chinese kids. It was getting really popular, and so he really did benefit off of that. The other thing is Kobe grew up in Italy. He spent ages, I think, 6 to 13 in Italy. So not only was he fluent in Italian, he was also fluent in Spanish and whatever. But he had a very global upbringing. So obviously, if you're growing up in Italy, you're speaking Italian. You're also going to be watching soccer. So he was a big AC Milan fan. So his soccer fandom, it really meshed basketball and soccer. That was that first guy that really linked basketball and soccer. He was really good friends with Ronaldinho. He was really tight with Messi, with their Turkish Airlines promo, Kaká, Andres Iniesta. He had strong ties with Barcelona and AC Milan. That's where that globalization really, I would say, reached its peak, because soccer is the most popular sport in the world. So all those fans following soccer also saw Kobe. They saw Kobe playing in these futsal tournaments with Barcelona, seeing him do kickflip, seeing him shoot basket or goal. So that's when they realized that, okay, this guy's a true, quote unquote, sportsman. You have the David Beckhams, you got the Muhammad Alis, you have the Pelés, you have the Messis. Kobe is up there as a global sportsman, quote unquote. So I think those two were the main factors that made Kobe the most popular Laker, arguably the most popular basketball player outside of Michael Jordan. The globalization of the NBA and Kobe just being a global icon through his upbringings in Italy and him being a soccer fan.
Hey, one thing I wanted to touch on, I think right now is a perfect time because you just mentioned soccer, is that there's only two sports that I can think of off the top of my head where the personal brand really plays such a big role. I was going through, you know what fatheads are?
Yeah.
So I was going through the Fatheads website. They have NBA, NHL, NFL, MLB. The only league on there where you actually see the full player is the NBA.
Yeah.
So I was talking to one of my friends yesterday. I'll give him a shout out, Shahir, about just the role of the face in personal brand. And he said, Mike Trout, who just landed like one of the biggest contracts ever, if he was in Meyer next to you, you would have no idea. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I have no idea what he looks like. And he's like, whereas any like half decent basketball player, you would realize it's next to you. You know what I mean? Because you can see them playing when the cameras are so up close to them that you can see their face, their expressions. You have Michael Jordan, his tongue sticking out when he's dunking, like all that stuff is embodied in it, and it really helps their personal brand. And now you mentioned soccer. I didn't even think about this, but soccer is the same way, where you can see the players' expressions. You have the facial recognition of Lionel Messi, Ronaldo, and all these other players. And so I think the NBA and the Lakers in particular, what role do you think that your personal brand really plays in choosing the Lakers? Like if you're a player, why would you come to the Lakers from a personal branding standpoint?
So again, as I mentioned, Dr. Jerry Buss, the great Lakers owner who won pretty much every LA championship through 2010, Kobe's last championship, he really set that tone, I guess, for the Los Angeles Lakers, that we are a winning franchise. We are going to win. We have that culture. I will get you whatever you need. I will get you the coaches. I will get you the athletic trainers. I will get you the facility. I will get you, whatever merchandise or plane or hotels or food, whatever you need. Anything from top to bottom. Jerry Buss wanted to, provide the best for his team. So the one aspect was I want to play for Jerry Buss. Two is you can't really just say Hollywood because we also have the Clippers, right? The Clippers, unfortunately, they've existed for 50 or so years. They've never reached NBA Finals, let alone a conference finals. So wouldn't anyone want to play for the Clippers too? No. The thing is, the Lakers are a brand. They're not just a sports team. They are a brand. I mean, if you have a Lakers logo and you're walking in Papua New Guinea, they're going to know what that is. And that's because of Jerry Buss, just him being an exceptional owner. They did benefit, and because of him, they won 5 championships in the NBA's golden era with Magic, Bird, Jordan, and then they won 5 more championships in the NBA's, I like to call it globalization/social media/internet era. So the 2 most popular eras, they won a total of 10 rings. So as an NBA player, yeah, you want to play in Hollywood. Yeah, you want to be in a big market because obviously you're going to benefit from your own marketing there. But, 2, you're going to win. You're going to win in Los Angeles. They've won 8 championships since 1986. The Boston Celtics have only won 1. So, they arguably have, I can't really do the math straight up out of my head, but that's roughly about 25 to 30% of the championships since 1986, just one franchise, the Lakers. So a player knows that he's going to win there.
Can you compare, just for the audience, like Jerry Buss's ownership over the Lakers versus some other franchise that doesn't have as good leadership over their team?
Yeah, so actually I'll go a little bit more in depth. So Jerry Buss died about 8 or 9 years ago, and his son took over, and his son did a terrible job. But then Jeannie Buss took over. Jeannie Buss actually fired her brother. So that's kind of what it takes to be a good owner, to have a good franchise, to be able to do that, to be able to disregard family, to be able to disregard long ties. When it's not working, it's not working. You got to realize we need to go a different direction. She was able to do that. Magic Johnson, quote unquote, left his position, but I'm pretty sure Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss pressured him to leave because he wasn't doing anything. So at the end of the day, you really need a good owner who knows what's best for the team.
And whether probably take an objective
as an owner, whether it's part of the legend as the GM, they're going to do what's best for the team, no matter how hard the decision is. So it's really hard to say if there's any other owners that are like that. I'll make an example. So Tom Gore's the owner of the Pistons. He had this attachment/bond with Andre Drummond. Now we knew 5 years ago that Andre Drummond was not going to make the Pistons better. If anything, he made them worse because he was just so inefficient. But he was so attached to him, he didn't want to trade him. And then he ended up trading him 5 years too late. We're at the point that the Pistons are now 12 years too late to a rebuild. Or they latched onto Stan Van Gundy for 4 years too long. Another example is Dan Gilbert of the Cleveland Cavaliers. How do you lose LeBron twice? Come on, how do you lose LeBron twice? How do you have arguably the greatest NBA player for 11 seasons and you only win 1 title? He didn't listen to LeBron. He didn't do what was best for the franchise. He didn't get him the good coaches. He didn't get him the right players. Even though LeBron, did so much for that franchise, it didn't translate.
Hey, are you saying Zydrunas Ilgauskas is not one of the best players?
Zydrunas Ilgauskas,
Anderson Varejao.
Sorry, Zydrunas was a very average player. Let's just say that. But I would say majority of the teams are not going to do what's best for their franchise. They kind of hold on to the longevity and like legend sentiment more than, hey, what's good? Like, how are we going to win? So
that's a super important point.
Everyone else.
And I bet Cheema, I think you can kind of extrapolate on that. Like, what is a role? Like, how big of an impact does leadership over product or brand have over like the directionality that it goes, and how hard is it to make those decisions? Because I know even from a Raptors perspective, when Raptors acquired Kawhi, everyone knew it was a one-time thing, right? But Masai Ujiri, probably one of the owners that would have made that decision to get that championship that others have not been able to over so many different years, right? It's funny because the Raptors have so many different phases, and like it happens. The reason why they have all these different phases is because they weren't strong enough or bold enough to make those decisions that will allow you to get the team to the next level. And Cheema, I know you're big in marketing leadership, and I don't know if you want to speak on that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll just quickly touch on this. You guys already made a lot of the points, so I don't want to beat a dead horse. But I have another podcast, and one of the things we always say on there, it's about leadership, is leaders are paid to make decisions, right? And so when you're at the GM level, at the owner level, really your job is literally is just to make decisions. And right, if you're not able to quickly make the decisions that are right for the team, then you're not a good leader, right? And so I think what Jaraad is highlighting when we're talking about the leadership of Dr. Jerry Buss and Jeannie Buss is that they were able to listen to their players and their staff and understand what the best decision was to make. And as a result, their team performed for them, right? And so one of the things you see is when you're, as a leader, you're running a team, if you don't take the feedback from your team, what'll happen is that your team will be disengaged and they're not going to want to play for you. And you see that, I mean, Jaraad, we could talk about the Lions maybe a little bit, but we see that in a lot of different franchises where like the players are professional players, right? They've spent their whole lives trying to get to this point. Yet when they show up on the field or show up on the court, it just seems like they don't care.
Yeah.
Right? And that's a result of poor leadership. It's not really the player's fault, right? And so that's the point I'd make there.
Yeah, that's a really good and strong point that you made. Throughout my interviews, one of the main things that I keep hearing or bring about is what's one of the most underrated qualities as a leader. And everyone or myself, we always say being a good listener. And a lot of people forget this, but this was one of the most pivotal parts in Lakers franchise history. The summer of 2008, Kobe wanted to leave. Kobe was on his way out. He was either headed to Chicago or Detroit. Those were his two destinations. He was that close to leaving. Dr. Jerry Buss called Kobe in, sat him down one-on-one, and listened to why Kobe wanted to leave. You know, Dr. Jerry Buss drafted him 11 years prior to that. He's known Kobe since he was a kid. He wanted to know why. He let Kobe talk to him. There was communication. There wasn't a door in between. There was a straight, direct communication. Kobe told him that he didn't like the direction the franchise was heading. You know, they were 3 years removed from an NBA Finals, and they were just in purgatory. He said, I need players to play with. And lo and behold, a few months later, they got Pau Gasol. The rest is history. That was the most pivotal point in Lakers franchise history, because had Kobe left, the Lakers would have been stuck in purgatory. Their brand would have diminished. That Mamba mentality wouldn't have been associated with the Lakers. Kobe may not have won 2 more rings with the Lakers. LeBron probably wouldn't go to the Lakers just because, you know, that whole, we're guaranteed to win a franchise ring or whatever, that wouldn't have been a thing. So I agree. Being a good listener is almost a necessity for being a good leader. You saw that with Dan Gilbert. There was a lot of miscommunication with him and LeBron. LeBron got fed up and he left. And he's from Cleveland, so.
Yo, Abdul Mannan, what's the definition of branding that we always give on the podcast?
You talk about reputation.
Yep,
that's one of the big ones.
So it's the perception that the end user has of a certain brand, right? So the brand value I have for the Lakers is different than Jaraad, is different from an NBA player, right? But the one thing that I think we can take as an input metric to your brand is the decisions you're making, right? And so having the humility to listen to what your players are saying and acting on it, for the players, that increases your brand value as a place that you want to work. And then for the fans, they see that, hey, Kobe was upset and they got through this. Like, this is an organization that listens. I want to also, support this team. So from an overall branding perspective too, it's a masterclass in how to increase your the perception of your brand, right? You listen to your team and you make decisions based on and what's best for the team, right?
Yeah,
That's
and
big.
consequently, obviously, when you're a good leader, when you're a good owner, and you listen to your team, you make the right decisions, you're going to have success. And the ordinary person, regardless of where they are, whether it's LA or Kansas, right? You're going to want to associate with success rather than mediocrity or even failure, obviously. So you want to latch onto stuff that are successful. We like having iPhones, because it's, again, it's like the most famous brand for technology. Everyone wants an iPhone. They're successful because of their sales and whatnot. Everyone wants an iPhone. Similarly, when you see someone wearing a Lakers t-shirt or when you see someone wearing a Kobe jersey, that's almost synonymous with success or the passion to be successful. If you see someone who has a Kobe jersey, your initial thought is like, oh, wow, this guy probably, has a Mamba mentality. He has good work ethic. He's striving for something. Whereas when you see someone with like a Ben Simmons jersey, you're just like, oh, whatever. He's just from Philadelphia. There's a difference. There's more than just location to that jersey. There's, again, success, your own personal vision and aspirations that you have, who you want to emulate, and there's just more to it than just being a basketball team in Los Angeles. And I think Kobe, out of any other Laker in franchise history, really catapulted, and distinguished the Lakers from the rest of the franchises just because of his Mamba mentality.
That's a really important point that you touched on. I want to expound on that a little bit more. For the audience that's listening that doesn't really follow basketball in general, I'm going to dumb this down a lot, so Jaraad, forgive me. But you generally follow a team for a couple of main reasons, right? Number one is going to be your geographical location. So I'm in Detroit, so I'm a Detroit Pistons fan. Number two, there are core values that each team represents, and what the Lakers have come to represent for millions and millions of people across the world is a brand of success and aspiring to success, similar to what I would say is like similar to Nike, right? Where like you don't just buy Nike because it's a running shoe or a basketball shoe. You buy Nike because it tells the world that, hey, I'm on a mission to be successful. I'm on a mission to be the best version of myself, that kind of thing. So that's what this brand has been able to do based on good leadership and attracting the right talent to their teams. Thank you for listening. We'll be right back. This episode is sponsored by Falcon Notes. If you are into digital planners, digital journals, Falcon Notes is the company for you. They make digital planners and digital journals. Check them out at falconnotes.io. And now, back to the episode.
One thing I actually wanted to ask Jaraad, so we talked about the Lakers being an attractive team to work for, and you explained that as the reason why, I was going to say patience, but you explained that as the reason why players want to join the Lakers. But we know also that, players have personal brands as well. My question to you is, like, if you're LeBron James, you have a personal brand. Now, how does joining a team like Lakers that has an established legacy affect like your personal brand? Because I feel like as LeBron, he had a legacy with, Cleveland. He had a legacy with Miami. He could have stayed, but he made the decision to move. Do you feel like that impacted his personal brand because he was joining the greatest of the greatest? Like, compare that to, for example, Michael Jordan, whose legacy most of all was, with the Chicago Bulls.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I'm just gonna throw out two examples. No shade at their talent or whatever they can do on the court, but Kyle Kuzma for a good season was the face of Puma. You would see him in every billboard in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Clarkson was dating a Kardashian or multiple, I don't even know, but like dating models. That doesn't happen in Memphis. That doesn't happen in Houston. That doesn't happen in Portland. The fact that Kyle Kuzma got all these endorsements, there was another energy drink that he got, that doesn't happen even in Miami
or Philly or anywhere. Yeah.
If those average players are getting significant marketing deals from big companies like Puma, other like menswear type of stuff, you want to take advantage of that, right? That's your way of getting a max deal, I guess. But again, I mean, obviously, like LA, you go there for the location, but 100%, you do go there for how it's going to benefit you outside, off the court.
You're saying that, to clarify, LeBron, you feel like LeBron's brand value went up by joining Lakers, not going down.
100%.
Like okay.
So when Kareem had just retired from the Lakers, I think it was 91 or 92, he was making guest appearances in lots of sitcoms. I mean, whether it was Full House, whether it was The Fresh Prince, right? Again, that doesn't happen if you're playing for the Denver Nuggets. You are going there to enhance your brand. Likewise, LeBron, he went into LA to win rings, obviously. One thing, we already talked about the success. Two, he wanted to build his brand, whether it was with Clutch Sports, Rich Paul, whether it was with Blaze Pizza, or more so, whether it was with his HBO content, The Shop, whether it was Space Jam. You're not going to get those opportunities in a different city. Maybe New York, but not to the extent of LA. So LA gives you that opportunity to market yourself, or people will reach out to you to market. There's rappers who are always doing music videos. There are movies that are always being shot that need extras or guest appearances. That whole entertainment industry being there, that itself is going to make even the most average player relevant.
That's I think another point I want to touch on that same note is that you see historically, NBA players haven't been or not even NBA players, all professional athletes, they make their money in this little window of like 4 or 5, maybe 10 years max. And then a lot of them, they're not able to hold on to that money. And what going to LA allows you to do is really diversify your income and make it so that it's not just, hey, I got a Supermax deal on my contract, and now that's like the only stream of income that I have. But now you have, other brands trying to work with you, partnering with you, and you can, you get more visibility across the board.
And that's true. I think a lot of these, even just local partnerships, like for example, Russell Westbrook has multiple dealerships in Orange County, which is just about 45 minutes south of LA. Just anything simple like that, it's gonna build your brand. A lot of people, Orange County is a more conservative area in Southern California, so they're not necessarily the biggest Lakers fans. Conservatives typically don't latch onto the NBA as much just because of its liberal views. So, a casual conservative isn't really gonna know a lot of these NBA players. But for example, Russell Westbrook, although he is a superstar, he isn't like the face of the NBA or anything. But the fact that he's able to have a dealership there, people are gonna be like, oh, that's Russell Westbrook. He has a dealership here, and that's him on TV. They make that connection right there. Whereas, you're not really gonna necessarily do that with other teams necessarily, just because. And again, I guess this is kind of going through a rabbit hole, but LA is a metropolis, so there is a lot more opportunity to do that. Whereas if you were to do that in Detroit, it's very saturated with car dealerships. I know this is really getting off topic, but like you're not going to see Andre Drummond Cadillac and Andre Drummond Ford, because there's already so many. Whereas LA is a huge sprawling metropolis, so there's always areas that are growing. It's a relatively newer area, so NBA players have more options to start up restaurants, collab with dealerships. John Elway has a Jeep Dodge Ram there too, famous Denver Broncos quarterback. So it's just a good way to market yourself, just because of its global.
You kind of touched on one thing that I wanted to. This is not part of Abdul Mannan. I'm going off script a little bit, but I really got me interested. But you mentioned that the NBA has a little bit liberal views, and we see this season in particular with supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. How important do you think it is for a league to align themselves, and what kind of impact does that have on the pop culture overall? the NBA deciding that, hey, we're going to, put Black Lives Matter on all our jerseys during the finals and the playoffs, like what kind of impact does that have, do you think?
I think it has overall a positive impact. And the reason I say that is because the younger generations, we're considered millennials. We tend to lean more liberal with views, correct? So the NBA is gearing more so towards that growing millennial, Gen X, the now Gen Z generations. That's who their target audience is, because those are the populations that are growing. That's going to be there in 40, 50 years. That's what's going to continue to keep the league not just, on par, but like it's going to allow it to grow more popular than other leagues such as the NFL and the NBA. And the NBA is already surpassing a lot of those leagues, mostly due to the global impact. But you look at the MLB and you look at the NFL, a little bit more conservative sports. You see a lot more boomers or people in their 50s and 40s who watch that. Whereas you see a lot of the 30, 20-year-olds who watch the NBA. So I think them aligning with the liberal views is indeed very smart, just because the generation that's going to keep this world going is more liberal. That's no secret. There are more liberals than conservatives. That's why the whole electoral college is there to be a buffer, but we don't need to go into that either. But overall, it's a positive impact. No matter what, whenever you take a political stance, there's always going to be backlash. There's always going to be people who disagree. But the fact that the entertainment industry has such a massive impact on many people's lives, and they align themselves with liberal views, that's always going to be popular. The entertainment industry is always going to be popular. So if you can have parallel views and kind of emulate their stances on things, that's going to be just as popular in a sense. And I know this is hypothetical, but I mean, you could look at the ratings and everything that the NBA is a lot more popular than when it was when David Stern was the commissioner. And there are multitudes of different factors, but the fact that they do have liberal viewpoints, it allows more people to kind of like, when you think about it this way, like, okay, yeah, they have liberal viewpoints, so you're not going to have the conservatives in Arkansas watching that, but you're going to have a lot of those LGBTQ people who latch onto that. You're going to have a lot of these young immigrant families who will watch that rather than watching the Detroit Tigers, or the Red Wings. It's just it makes it more, I guess, welcoming for a very growing population, I guess. That's the best way
the Lakers have, Cheema, you shared with me a couple of days ago, like the Lakers brand guidelines. They're one of the only teams that have a brand guideline. I was like looking over it all when you had shared with me the Lakers one, but not a lot of teams have it. And one of the values that the Lakers brand guideline promotes is diversity and inclusion. So it's just a matter of sticking, from a Lakers specific perspective, but also from an NBA perspective, sticking to your core values. And I want to pivot right now to talk about a little bit more story and heritage. But one more thing, just because I brought up that brand guidelines that the Lakers have, it's interesting, Jaraad, that you say that like David Stern wanted to make the NBA a little bit more global, but it sounds like there's only very few teams that took that opportunity to increase their brand value, with Lakers being one of them, specifically because of Kobe. And what's interesting, again, it's in that brand guideline that they want to provide entertainment at a global level, right? And so having these values established right off the bat and creating a culture around it allows your team or allows your brand to, go into those spaces. And I think that's something that Lakers are doing a lot better than a lot of other teams. Like we said, Kobe's the one who has like basketball academies in China and stuff like that. Probably Yao Ming, T-Mac too, but that's an important part of their brand that I think a lot of other teams don't have, that brand guideline that establishes the values. And now, Cheema, I know that you mentioned the significance. We always talk about story and heritage being an important aspect of, telling your brand story, telling your brand values. Do you think, I know you mentioned that, Lakers obviously have a huge heritage. Walk us through that. Walk us through like some of those things that you found about the Lakers that you feel like really established their story. You're talking about the titles, you're talking about players, all that stuff. I was like, dang, I didn't know about this.
Right. I think we should defer this to Jaraad as the Lakers fan of the house. But let's start with you mentioned this a little bit. They used to be the Minneapolis Lakers.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what was the decision there? Why did they move to LA? And then talk to us a little bit about as Abdul Mannan mentioned, like the championships they've won, the storied history, the legacy that they have.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I don't have the exact answer as to why they moved to Los Angeles. Again, they were in Minneapolis. They won 5 rings in Minneapolis, so they were a successful franchise in Minneapolis, primarily with George Mikan and their initial famous, good stereotypical big man before the Wilts, before the Kareems, before the Shaqs. So again, they were very good in Minneapolis. But I think a driving force was just Los Angeles growing as a metropolis. The Brooklyn Dodgers had just recently moved to Los Angeles as well. It was just growing as a metropolis. That was the quote unquote Hollywood's golden era during the 50s and 60s. So it was just a booming place. So I don't have the exact answer, but I'm assuming it had to do with Los Angeles being like that land of opportunity.
I'm assuming they didn't have a team in LA at the time.
They did not. No, they did not have a team in LA. The owners probably saw it as a good market to start a basketball team, a profitable place, just because at that point it was either the second or third largest city. I think it probably did pass Chicago at that point, which was a driving force. But again, everything was moving westward at that point. So I think that was a main driving force.
It's funny because they kept the name when they moved. The Minneapolis Lakers were called the Lakers because of apparently that Minneapolis was known as the land of land of 10,000 lakes.
Yeah.
They moved to LA. You got a Pacific Ocean, or you got your Pacific Ocean on one side, but not many lakes. But they kept the name, which is interesting because now it makes sense now that you mention it, because they've had the 5 trophies, 5 championships before they even moved. I was like, why would they keep the name? But if they've had 5 championships, I think that's definitely something important to build off of.
Yeah, and I think that's the whole success thing. If something's broke or something's good, you don't fix it unless it's broke, right?
Yeah.
So they already won 5 rings. The franchise had its, iconic players, its legends. So, I don't think they really wanted to toy with it too much. And now when you think about it, there are a lot of high schools, there are a lot of universities that have that name, Lakers. And why is that? Yeah, a lot. Like Grand Valley State University. There's a few high schools in Metro Detroit that also have Lakers as their mascot. And that's because, you want to be synonymous with success. You want to be synonymous with the Lakers. So it's, yeah, you made a great point. Los Angeles, it's not known for lakes. It's Minnesota. They're known for their lakes. But the fact that brand was able to make their mascot synonymous with success, and that everyone else is basically stealing that just goes to show that at the end of the day, when you think about everything, location, sure, Hollywood, owner, whatever, at the end of the day, success is what's going to drive that brand, no matter what. Yeah. People always want to associate with success.
I think that's a really important point, and I want to analyze another example. So, the Seattle Supersonics became the Oklahoma City Thunder, and they completely, started from scratch. So, hey, we're going to scrap the name, we're going to do everything. And so, I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm assuming Seattle Supersonics probably didn't have any titles and weren't known as much of a winning organization as the Lakers, right? What do you think?
They had one title, I think, in '79, but again, that's just one title, right? And they had another era with Gary Payton, Sean Kemp, where they made the finals, I think, once. So they had some spurts of success, but it wasn't I wouldn't consider it success overall. Mm-hmm. That was more so the owner just wanted to move to Oklahoma City just because he saw after Hurricane Katrina, when the Hornets moved to Oklahoma City, that it could be potentially a good market. It is a good market. There's no other professional sports, so basketball is going to be the most popular sport there. Everyone's going to want to go to the games. There's going to be good money coming in. Again, the owner also has ties to Oklahoma. I think he's from Oklahoma as well, so he wanted to completely rebrand it. But that's again because they were able to. the Seattle Supersonics, they weren't the Lakers, they weren't the Celtics, they weren't the Bulls.
Right.
They were the Sonics, right? Just like the Washington Bullets. The Washington Bullets won one title, and they changed their name to the Wizards. They wanted to rebrand, even though they won a ring with the Bullets. They just wanted to rebrand because they thought it sucked. Or the St. Louis Hawks, they moved to Atlanta, and they completely redid their entire image and everything. The Cincinnati Royals changed their name to the Sacramento Kings. Just a lot.
Bobcats.
What was that?
Charlotte Bobcats.
Charlotte Bobcats. That's just for something that's very confusing that we can't even explain to our viewers because it confuses me. But even the New Jersey Nets, why do they want to be the Brooklyn Nets? You'd rather want to associate with Brooklyn than New Jersey, right? You'd want to associate with Brooklyn. Why? Because people put Brooklyn on the map. Who? Jay-Z. Jay-Z bought into the Nets, made them popular. And that's kind of, why the Lakers are popular. I don't know if you guys were going to delve into this, but having ambassadors, having super fans, that's really, really going to take your brand from nothing to something. And I know, Abdul, you can agree with this. Before Drake came into play, we could just talk about city. Before Drake came into play, the city of Toronto was not the same. The Raptors were not the same.
The way it is now.
No, they weren't. Vince Carter kind of put them on the map, but it was just like, oh, they're there. Okay, that's it.
Yeah.
Having those
contest champions, stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay. having the Jack Nicholsons, having the Snoop Dogs, having the Adam Sandlers, the
Leonardo DiCaprio,
the DiCaprios, the Will Ferrell, having those guys, and again, they benefit because it's so close to home. But having those guys rock the Lakers, rep the Lakers, be diehard Lakers fans, that's just gonna boost their popularity even more. Jack Nicholson is one of the greatest actors of all time. He has like 3 or 4 Oscars. He already has a lot of fans, under his belt. So he's bringing all those fans, and now they're watching the Lakers just because they like Jack Nicholson. He's the middleman.
Yeah.
I think the Lakers, out of any professional franchise in America, does that better than anyone. They just killed after a game.
They capitalized on the fact that they can bring in a lot of these things called brand ambassadors. And for our audience, brand ambassadors were basically kind of like Momo from our last episode. He doesn't consider himself a brand ambassador, but the fact that you are loyal to a brand and will share that brand with others essentially makes you a brand ambassador. And that's what these guys are that Jaraad is talking about. Jack Nicholson, Adam Sandler, Drake for Toronto, Spike Lee for New York Knicks, even though they're not there, the bottom there. But yeah.
One thing I want to touch on here is that the personality of these super fans in the NBA is compared to every other sports league that I can think of. It's a totally unique experience. You think of the guy in Toronto, the guy with, I forgot his name.
This is a joke.
No, I'm saying, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like the guy that's been at every single game.
Nav.
Oh, yeah. The Indian guy?
Yeah, him. So like he's been at every single game for like 17 years or something like.
Yeah.
And the players have a relationship with him because number one, you're so close to the actual action that like sometimes a ball will, like I've been courtside a couple of times. You could talk to the players. Like the players will hear you. And I remember when Cleveland and what's his name? Oh shoot, Cleveland has a really bad relationship with Joakim Noah because Joakim Noah talked trash about Cleveland. And so I went to the game, I think maybe 2 years ago now, Memphis Grizzlies versus Cleveland Cavaliers. And the stadium, every time Joakim Noah touched the ball, it was insane, man. There's this guy that's sitting like, I was courtside at this game. There's a guy sitting 2 rows over. Every time Joakim Noah's inbounding the ball, he's like cussing him out. And Joakim Noah's a big, scary dude, man. I was like, Joakim Noah turned around, looked at him, and like give him the meanest look. I was scared for my life, man. The dude like sat down. He's like, okay, sorry.
I heard Jaraad had some pretty wild stories from Detroit Piston game too. I know Jaraad's one of those really avid fans. I don't know if you want to share that on this podcast. You want to skip that for now until your interview season goes by, or I don't know what.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays in the NBA, you have we like to call it soft. There's a lot of soft players. I'm not going to name any players, but yeah, there are a few players in the Pistons who are soft, and you can yell stuff at them, and they would look at you and like actually feel sad. We don't need to go into that too much, but yeah, no.
Yeah, so
That's cool.
Again, the point that I'm making is that people like Jack Nicholson, people like Nav Bhatia and Drake, them being there courtside and like Drake hugging the coach after, right? That's only something that happens in the NBA. And so that's something where the brand of the team is being elevated because they can see the personal brand of Drake, Jack Nicholson, DiCaprio interacting with that brand. You know what I mean? Like in other sports, even soccer, like you can't step on the court. You know what I mean? Like even if you're there, you're watching, you're just kind of like, sitting there, just like just watching from afar. But like when you're at a basketball game, like you could jump up and down on the court with your team. You know what I mean? That's, I think, something that's unique to basketball and something that really elevates, and they're able to leverage, with the fan cams and stuff like that very, very well.
And it goes, I mean, you're talking about NBA teams right now, but really it can expand to any brand, right? We talk about brand ambassadors being there for other brands. Like we talk about Figs having specific physicians as brand ambassadors. We talk about like, I don't know, we were talking about watches off the camera, Cheema. We talk about some newer watch brands that need brand ambassadors to elevate their brand game, whereas some companies don't. So brand ambassadors, definitely, they play a very important role. And if you're listening and you have a brand that you want to elevate, having brand ambassadors generally, especially if you're more low key, plays an important role. And that is something that we see with the Lakers and some of the NBA teams that are able to capitalize on that.
Abdul Mannan, one thing I wanted to ask you, I know you were going through the brand guidelines, is that I was quickly skimming through those as well. And one thing I noticed is that they have a primary logo, they have a secondary logo, they have a word mark logo 1, they have a word mark logo 2, they have all these different variations of the logo. And I would go as far as saying, my personal opinion is that you don't need that many logos. But why don't you walk us through, like, why would, as a business or as a personal brand, why would you need multiple variations of your logo? Why is that important to have? And what does that allow you to do?
So there's a few different ways you can look at it. One is whether or not the logo itself is super versatile or not, right? So if the logo is versatile, you can use it in different places without having to change it much, right? And so if you feel like you don't need your logo in many places, like a very specific brand, like for example, pens, the only place you're ever going to have pens are on a desk. Only place you're going to have a logo is on the pen itself. You don't need multiple logos. But you expand that to a team like the Lakers, they have jerseys, they have courts, they have like apparel, they have things that need to be like really big and also really small. So these situations where your brand needs to be on like different sizes and different like locations, you need to have different versions of the logo. For example, when you're sitting courtside, when you see the NBA court, when you see the Lakers Staples Arena, there's very little space at the edge of the court to have a name or a logo. The L for the Lakers, the basketball, that's too big. It's not going to fit. And so you need to have the versatility in the logo, or you need to have different versions of the logo to be able to kind of use it. I imagine the one that you saw, the Los Angeles Lakers written right across, I imagine that's used on stuff like if they had their own private plane, like that would be something that goes on a plane, for example, or if they had like merchandise that was long, linear, water bottles, stuff like that. You can kind of have specific logos, or you can have different logos that allow you to have that versatility. That's one of the main things. And then the other reason you can have different logos is to be able to, I guess I kind of mentioned it, to be able to maximize on the size, right? So sometimes if your logo is super detailed, it might work in the center court, but it's not going to work on like a bottle, for example, or a bottle cap. And so you need to make an alternative logo that doesn't have that many details that can fit in those environments. That's basically the short answer. And it's interesting that the Lakers have so many too, because I think it makes sense that they've really maxed out on their brand value by expanding their products and services and merchandise to various different areas.
I wanted to bring up an interesting point. I think another reason why the Lakers brand, it is what it is today. It is what it is after, all these decades of successful basketball, from the 70s onwards, 60s onwards, is because they've kept that primary logo the same. It's been standard. Yeah. It's been consistent. Now, when you look at the successful NBA franchises, I'm talking about the Lakers, the Celtics, the Bulls. They haven't really done much with the logo, and that's because, again, if it's not broke, don't, I mean, unless it's broke, you don't fix it. That's what's driving the brand, I believe. That's what's driving the brand. When you continuously change the logo and stuff like that, people over the years, they start to lose familiarity. They start to, in a way, lose an attachment almost. People who grew up with West and Wilt, they're probably in their 80s, 90s now, right? They're still going to want to rock the same logo. Whereas when people grew up watching, for example, the Sixers, when they had Malone, when they had Barkley, when they had Mo Cheeks, they had a completely different logo. They probably didn't emulate too much with the 01 Sixers, Iverson Sixers, or even now with Embiid and Simmons Sixers, because it's just so different now. Like the colorway is different. Iverson wore black, these guys wore red. Like it seems like an almost different franchise. Whereas the Lakers, the Celtics, the Bulls, you could put the Spurs in there too. They kept that constant black and white for the Spurs, the red and white for the Bulls, the green and white for the Celtics, the purple and gold for the Lakers. That's a consistent standard that I think is very underrated and overlooked at times.
No, for sure. I agree.
That's going to solidify that brand. That's what's really going to cement it into being what it is today.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other NBA team that has changed their logo as much as the Raptors have. They started with the dinosaur, which was actually pretty cool because they brought it back.
They get away with it because they got a cool mascot. That's the exception.
But it's an interesting point that you bring up, because the Raptors of that, or the fans of the Raptors of that time, are not the same. They're not going to recognize the Raptors of this time, and similarly the way backwards as well. The Raptors fans now will never recognize the Raptors unless they've been like true loyal fans throughout. So that's an important brand value right there, is that don't change things if it's not broke. And even like you said earlier, when they moved from Minneapolis, they didn't change the logo, they didn't change the name. Well, they changed the logo a little bit, but they didn't change the name. Which is super important to keep. That's a great point. Yeah.
That was another interesting point you made. You mentioned real fans, legit fans, right? Again, I think another overlooked component about this whole thing is a significant driving force of the brand's success or popularity is also the casual fans.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about casual teams, you think about the Hawks, you think about the Mavericks, you think about the Blazers. Those are casual teams, right?
Yeah.
But when you have a successful team like the Lakers, they're pretty much on the same playing field. But it's the casuals who are like, "Oh, Lakers, okay, yeah, they had Shaq and Kobe like 20 years ago. That's cool. I know that. I'm gonna recognize that." It's really funny because there was a girl who was in my 8th grade class. So this was 2007, 2008. And I was wearing a Gary Payton Lakers jersey. And she recognized it right away. She's like, "Oh my God, you're a Lakers fan? Oh my God." Now, this is some random girl in Metro Detroit who probably just dances and plays like the trombone. She doesn't know what sports is. But the fact that she knew what the Lakers was, because a lot of these casual fans, they really bring this brand up, right? Casual fans are going to know the Lakers. They're going to know the Bulls. They're going to know the Celtics, right? They're going to know what's famous. So, yeah, they already benefit from being famous, these brands, these teams, but the casuals just lift them up even higher. Mm-hmm. And that's what, glorifies them. They puts them on a different tier, a different pedestal. And again, it's not they're just benefiting from it, right? It's just
there's no loss, basically.
Yeah.
So if I'm understanding what you're saying correctly, is that if you truly have a great brand, then just a random person who dances and plays the trombone should be able to recognize you.
Yeah, no, like I said, the Lakers, if you wear a Lakers t-shirt, just a plain Lakers t-shirt with the logo in the right corner, and you're walking in Namibia, in Africa, they're going to recognize that. They're not going to recognize the Philadelphia 76ers logo. They're not going to recognize the Miami Heat logo. There are only a very few handful of teams in North America that are, up to that stature. It's the New York Yankees with the iconic Yankees hat, the Los Angeles Lakers, Chicago Bulls because of Michael Jordan, and maybe the Dallas Cowboys just because they're America's team.
Yeah.
Aside from that, no one's even gonna recognize the Red Wings, even though they have the most Stanley Cups in America. No one's gonna recognize them in Indonesia. You're gonna recognize the Lakers. You're gonna recognize the Bulls. You're gonna recognize the Yankees. These are the brands that you want to emulate.
Jaraad, I didn't have a lot of time to research this, but one of the things that we talked about on the Belroy podcast was that the company had developed like a community for people to kind of gather around, and they used that community to kind of push their product. Right, and that was the community of what was it called, Cheema?
Everyday Carry. It was like
carryology, like some website where people can talk about like carry items and stuff like that, right? So the Lakers have something interesting that a lot of teams don't have. They have what's called Lakers Nation. Now, I quickly went on the website. I tried to get some information about that, but if you have any insight on what Lakers Nation is and how the Lakers brand benefits from that would be interesting to hear from you.
Yeah. For the most part, Lakers Nation is kind of let's say a spin-off of Mamba Mentality. That thing really formed around 2008, 2010 when the Lakers were winning with Kobe again. That's when that really formed. And it became, I would say cult is the right word. Again, everyone in Los Angeles loved Kobe Bryant. He was the most popular, most famous person in Los Angeles at that time, regardless of what actor there was or whatever. Everyone loved Kobe Bryant. So this was kind of more so of a Kobe Bryant fan club, let's just put it that way, that ended up turning into a Los Angeles Lakers fan club. Now, we all know that the Lakers had about a 6 to 7 year drought where they weren't really successful. But these guys, because they were so attached to Kobe, they were so attached to that success, these fanboys, they became attached to the Lakers. So they were watching Ryan Kelly and Jordan Clarkson and Jeremy Lin, losing all these games. And the whole Laker Nation mindset was like, okay, we're the Lakers. This is just going to be temporary. We're going to be good again. We're not going to abandon this. So for the most part, it's a very loyal fanboy type of cult thing that pretty much started from the Kobe Bryant, Pau Gasol era. And now it's basically kind of synonymous with Mamba Mentality. It's like this whole mindset, like, oh, we're Laker Nation, we're strong, we win rings, we're very optimistic, we know we're going to be good. It's kind of like that mentality in a way.
You would think other teams have something like this, but I'm wondering if you know about any other teams that have something like this. I don't know.
Yeah, so obviously, the North in Toronto. That's pretty comparable. Again, they latched onto the whole DeRozan Lowry era, not even the Bucks, so Lowry and DeRozan. Then obviously you guys benefited from Kawhi. It's this whole embodiment. It's a fanboy like, oh, we're the best fans in the NBA, blah blah blah. We're the North.
And this is different from the Lakers. Like Laker Nation is not Lakers. It's just something that fans develop and keep it running. Is that right? I feel like they have reporters. They update you on the latest news. Are they Lakers people? Are they not Lakers people?
So they, for the most part, they're not employed by the Los Angeles Lakers, but they are significant contributors. So obviously in this world of Twitter now, everything is Shams, everything is Waj, right? These guys break all the news. A lot of times you will have a lot of these Laker Nation personnel because at this point, 10 plus years in, they have a decent foundation, a decent amount of connections where they actually have significant sources. So they will break significant newses. They will, regardless if it's a big free agency signing or whatever it is, they will say like, oh, LeBron's in this restaurant and he's meeting with Jeannie Buss. Maybe they're talking about a contract extension, or LeBron just landed right after Kobe's death and he's in tears. This is how LeBron is feeling, because people are interested in that too. So even though they're not providing the blockbuster news, they're still providing essential news that Lakers fans want to know. Like, oh my God, is LeBron going to sign an extension? Oh my God, what is LeBron thinking when Kobe ended? It's a whole different aspect of the fandom, I guess. There's the serious side, and then there's the fun side. So the serious side is obviously the contracts, the trades, and all that. The fun side is what people kind of like to, it's like gossip, I guess. It's like paparazzi for Hollywood. It's synonymous with that. So I think that's it's beneficial. It's beneficial because
For sure.
Again, not only does it make the team popular, it makes the players popular. People wouldn't know Alex Caruso would not be who he is without Lakers Nation. Average player, very average player, ball. Honestly, he's not even that good. He's just athletic.
I just saw on that game yesterday. They put up a stat. I didn't realize he was playing. He scored 5.5 points per game last season.
Yeah,
based
he's
on
not
the
good.
Lakers Nation, it sounded like he was scoring way more than
that. Exactly, right? So now everyone in America knows who Alex Caruso is. The Lakers Nation that's what they do. They're like they're an army of hype men. Just think of it like that.
Yeah.
But again,
they're definitely hype as well.
We talked about tribes in the last episode too. One of the things that we saw is that a way to really quickly, expand the reach of your tribe and the impact of your tribe is to give them a way to communicate with each other. So having this Lakers Nation or having We the North, where they all have one thing in common, is that we're our fans of this team. And then now they have a way to communicate with each other. Now that's like, we got a bunch of best friends.
Yeah.
Every conversation you're gonna have is gonna be about the Lakers or the Raptors or whatever your team is. So it's a really good way to really, really quickly elevate your brand.
Yeah, 100%. It's almost essential.
Yeah.
Before we go on to the classic closing, we wanted to ask you, what are you looking forward to this season?
With the NBA being shortened, or Detroit Pistons.
I love looking at the young players, seeing how their games grow, how they develop, because they're the future of the NBA. I love watching guys like Luka, Tatum, Booker. I'm interested with Killian Hayes on the Pistons, if he's going to be good or not. I'm interested to see. To me, I think LeBron's a go, but I mean, if he wins it this year again, and they're heavily favored to win it, this is a better team than last year. Michael Jordan's he's gonna be a second thought. I mean, there's no debate. There's no debate from this. There's no debate. So I'm very interested to see how dominant he's gonna be in year 18, age 36. He's turning 36 in 4 days. No athlete in the NBA has done that. At the age of 36, 18 years, thousands of miles, still dominating and winning rings. I want to see if you can do that, because if you can do that, there's no more doubts. You can't criticize him anymore on the court, at least.
Like it.
Yeah.
So Jaraad, we started this new thing where we ask our guests whenever they're on, what is your favorite brand right now? Not the one that we talked about, other than the one that we talked about. Do you have a brand that you're loyal to that you want to share with the audience?
Yeah. So I think I'm pretty loyal to, and this will sound pretty stupid, but Lululemon. I truly believe that they've really built up their brand, and when you have good quality, people are going to notice.
Have you tried their ABC pants?
Yes, I do.
I think those are the greatest pants in
I'm
existence.
currently wearing the Surge joggers. Yeah. So at the end of the day, people want good products, right? They want stuff that work. They want stuff that will last. Lululemon, they have exceptional products, from the textiles to the zipper work, just whatever it is. The detail, it's there, it's good. It will last to 10 to 15 years. Yeah, they may be pricey, but within that 10 to 15 year span, you're going to be buying 6 to 7 of those Adidas track pants, right? I think Lululemon really does. Let's just say this, Mamba mentality. You could use it in any avenue. We all know that, right? That's why everyone loves it.
Hey, no, I don't like where this is going.
I think they're the best of the best, and they know that. They know that. You know what?
Let's quote Jaraad on this one. Lululemon has Mamba mentality.
I didn't know about that, so I'm gonna have to.
This isn't sponsored. I just really do like their products, so I stopped buying Adidas and Nike sweatpants. I just think that Lululemon stuff is very comfortable. It's good quality. Never have any issues. If you do have an issue, lifetime warranty. Where are you gonna get that? Nice. They'll give you free pants, essentially. Top to bottom, they're really good.
I got to
thank you so much.
Product from them.
Thank you guys for having me. It was very fun. Hopefully, I can make another appearance.
Definitely.
For sure.
Take care, guys.
Hey, enjoy
All
LA,
right, guys.
man.
That wraps up the podcast episode for today. Peace out.
Wow, there was a lot discussed in that episode. As always, I have some thoughts, but before we get to that, I want to share with you a clip from our episode on Christopher Nolan's personal brand. Check it out. Like, he has a reputation of staying under budget, like delivering on the budget he has set for the film, and then also delivering on time, right? And so that is something that will highly, highly impact the ability to get your next movie, right? So when you're talking about personal brand, so this goes outside of the actual customers that are coming to watch the movie, but if I'm the director going to talk to studio heads about getting some money for the next movie, I need to have a certain personal brand that they associate with me. And they may not care so much about the ideas, because clearly, like when we're pitching Dunkirk, you know what I mean? It's like, but they do care about Christopher Nolan. When he shoots a movie, he stays under the budget that he asked for.
Yeah.
And he delivers on time, and the movies make their money back.
Yeah.
And that is enough for us to sign off on whatever the heck he wants. If you like Christopher Nolan movies, or if you want to develop your personal brand, check out that episode. All right, now here are my key takeaways from this episode. Number 1, attracting talent is about setting the culture from the top down. If you want to attract the Kobe Bryants and the LeBron Jameses of your industry to your small business, to your brand, you have to start with a compelling vision. And then once you get those Kobe Bryants and LeBron Jameses in your organization, you have to listen to them when they're saying you're not living up to your vision, and take action and make decisions based on that feedback you're getting. Having that culture where your team feels like they're listened to will make them want to work for you. The brand value that the employees have for the company will increase dramatically. And number 2, as shown to us by the late, great Kobe Bryant, is be the hero in your own story. As your brand gets bigger, chances are that some kind of negative press, negative media, negative rumors are going to start spreading about you or your brand. You have to take ownership of your own story. Don't let that hold you back. As always, we are deeply appreciative that you have chosen to listen to us. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you next time.